Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain, and I want to welcome you to this special presentation on using decision intelligence to turbocharge your sales and operations planning, presented by Gurobi Optimization. One quick note, there will be an audience question and answer session at the end of this presentation. Audience members are encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. So sales and operations planning, or S&OP, is an essential strategic activity that brings together sales, marketing, finance, and operations teams. Typically, it's executed every quarter, primarily by manufacturers. But far too many businesses, even those in the Fortune 500, have inadequate S&OP practices and tools. So today, we're going to get an introduction to improving your S&OP process. We'll learn how you can enhance it with the help of decision intelligence guided by 21st century best practices. And we'll demo and showcase DaRRT, a comprehensive S&OP application powered by Gurobi. With that, I want to introduce our speaker for today. Dr. Vijay Hanagandi is CEO of Optimal Solutions. He has over 20 years of experience in solving decision intelligence problems for the pharmaceutical, chemical, automotive, food and beverage, airline, and petrochemical sectors. His past positions include working for the Los Alamos National Laboratory, GE Corporate Research, and GE Plastics. Vijay leads OSI's consulting practice where custom solutions and products are developed. But first, let's hear from David O'Keefe, Director of Alliances and Partners in the Americas at Gurobi Optimization, the sponsor of this webinar. David?
Thank you, Bob and Ralph and the Supply Chain Brain team for organizing this session. Gurobi is proud to sponsor this webinar to share with your audience how Gurobi's technology is used to solve the mission-critical challenges that global supply chain professionals must overcome. Gurobi works with partners worldwide to enable the development of decision intelligence solutions using the Gurobi Optimizer, the world's most powerful solver. Gurobi powers supply chain solutions in well-known platforms such as SAP Integrated Business Planning and Oracle Retail Analytics, as well as solutions from specialist software vendors such as DaRRT from Optimal Solutions. For more information about how to use Gurobi in your solution, please contact me directly or visit gurobi.com. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Vijay Hanagandi of Optimal Solutions to present DaRRT, powered by Gurobi.
All right. Thanks, Bob and Dave, for that wonderful introduction here. Right. Thank you all attendees for your time today listening to me on this webinar. This is the outline or the agenda of the webinar. Many of you may or may not be familiar with sales and operations planning, or S&OP. Hence, I will take you through its formal definition and explain to you the process itself so that you are oriented better. And then I will cover decision intelligence formally, or DI. I will switch back and forth between using decision intelligence and DI for short. Then I will discuss how DI can be leveraged for S&OP. And after that, I will segue into DaRRT, the DI-based S&OP tool that we have developed. Then I will make a case for adoption of decision intelligence for S&OP by showcasing the benefits of doing so, both qualitative as well as quantitative. After that, we will play a six-minute video of a DaRRT demo where you will see it in action. And after that, we'll summarize and end with call to action. Okay. Yeah, so here's the intro to sales and operations planning itself. S&OP, as Bob mentioned at the start of the call, it's an essential strategic planning activity that brings sales, finance, and operations teams together. When I talk about operations teams, these are the manufacturing folks who have the responsibility to execute the plan. S&OP S&OP is basically the planning activity. It sets the strategic plan for the business and guides the tactical production execution to adhere to the company's long-term as well as the medium-term goals. So it involves several, it has to pull together several stakeholders in the company, including finance, manufacturing, sales, and marketing. That's why it becomes collaborative and complex. Here, I explained the S&OP cycle itself in a little more detail so you get better oriented. It starts with a data gathering process. It is executed in a cadence. It's typically executed every quarter or every month for a planning cycle that has a horizon of a year or more. So it starts with data gathering exercise where data is gathered and curated. And here, what I mean by data here is all the data related to the inputs that go into creation of the plan itself, like capacities, demand, forecast, and so on. And in the next step, the demand forecasting team itself gets involved and gets to finalize the demand based on all the activities going on in the company, like promos, new product launches, and so on, and market and seasonalities and so on. And after that, the production guys or the operations guys get involved in creating the plan itself using the demand forecast and the capacity data. Once the plan is created, the financial impact is assessed by the FP&A, typically the financial planning and analysis team in the company. And they also assess any debottlenecking opportunities that the planners have proposed. So this is one cycle. And what I have not indicated here is an iterative process where the team goes back and forth between demand planning, operations, and marketing to finalize on several scenarios that could unfold in the future for the company. And the process itself culminates in the form of S&OP meetings, a series of S&OP meetings with senior leadership. Usually the CFO is involved, and sometimes the CEO is also involved. And in those meetings, the management will ask several what-if scenarios to be run so that the team can iterate and come up with the best plan to execute. So this is a typical process a company follows. Right? And I forgot to mention earlier, and where is S&OP relevant, right? It's the process of, as I mentioned, it's the process of planning demand fulfillment in a company that makes products. Especially it is relevant for companies that make multiple products at multiple sites using multiple suppliers. It is the process of deciding how much to make, what, and when. It also decides the company's inventory policy and raw material sourcing policy. It involves, as I mentioned, it involves stakeholders from finance, sales, and marketing, and operations. And it develops the sourcing, production, inventory, and shipment plan for the company. All right, let me switch gears here to discuss a little about decision intelligence itself. Decision intelligence, or DI for short, is a science of making the best decisions in constrained environments with many, perhaps billions of options and trade-offs. It is educative to deconstruct the 4 pillars of DI to understand it better. Here are the 4 pillars: the objective, the decisions, constraints, and parameters. The objectives are your KPIs. and I've given some examples here. Cost, profit, fill rate, NPS, and so on. Note that they may not all be in the same units. Your decisions are your shipment decisions, production decisions, inventory, safety stock, procurement, supplier selection, on and on. Those are your decisions. Your constraints are the process constraints, supply chain constraints, thermodynamics, physical constraints, inventory constraints, and so on. And the parameters are your constants, which don't change quickly. These are your demand, supply, unit cost, warehouse capacity cost, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the 4 pillars of decision intelligence. And the bottom line is decision intelligence is nothing but the science of optimizing in the face of many constraints and handling many variables and trade-offs. And it searches through billions of solutions that satisfy the constraints to arrive at the best solution. In doing so, it also automates decision-making itself. Some of you may be familiar with the terms like optimization, math programming, and constraint programming. Those are all synonyms for decision intelligence, and it is at the heart of the field of operations research. Let's discuss the mechanics of applying decision intelligence itself for sales and operations planning. Here, the supply chain is modeled as a collection of equations or algebraic expressions that describe the decisions, constraints, and KPIs. Then a solver like Gurobi is used to solve for the optimal decision variables. Think of the solver as an engine that solves many simultaneous equations and arrives at the best set of decision variables in terms of the KPIs to optimize the KPIs. For example, examples of decisions are in production quantities that need to be shipped, production quantities that need to be adjusted for work centers, items that need to be fixed, quantities that need to be fixed, shipped to customers, and shipping lanes to be used, and so on. KPIs are your profits, costs, and other metrics the business is measured on, or the supply chain efficiency is measured on. Constraints are your plant capacities, and so on. Note that the model accuracy depends on the detail considered in forming the decisions and constraints. For example, a supply chain that is modeled at the SKU level is more complex than the one that is modeled at the product family level. Likewise, a supply chain that is modeled at the production work center level is more complex than if it were to be modeled at the plant capacity level. So the more detailed the model, the more complex it will be, but the more actionable and optimal the plan will be. This emphasis on detail in decision making makes large supply chains choose custom-built enterprise-grade applications like DaRRT versus spreadsheets. Gurobi is a crucial enabler in solving such problems at scale. All right. So far, we have formally defined S&OP, Sales and Operations Planning, and Decision Intelligence, or DI. We also motivated the use of DI for S&OP. Now I will introduce DaRRT. And DaRRT is a custom-built tool to create S&OP plans. Using DaRRT, planners can create an unlimited number of scenarios using simple manipulations in the user interface. No SQL capabilities required. The end user can simply drag and drop and filter data on screen and create scenarios rapidly to their heart's content. DaRRT also provides the ability to queue scenarios, not only create the scenarios, but also queue them to be run in batch jobs so that they can run many Monte Carlo-like simulations in their supply chain, of their supply chain. DaRRT features a rich user interface to facilitate scenario comparisons and collaboration. And it also integrates with Excel. We all know we love Excel. It integrates Excel for rapid testing and proving concepts. So for example, if at the beginning of the project, if data is available only in Excel, and users can use that to feed DaRRT to get scenarios run rapidly, while the data interfaces are built to their corporate ERP systems. DaRRT also enables seamless debottlenecking of supply chain constraints. Let me dwell on this a little more. As I mentioned in the S&OP cycle, towards the end, there is a negotiation cycle where many parties are involved in negotiating what plan would be used, what demand would be used to satisfy in the supply chains. In that cycle, many times companies encounter demand shortfalls, meaning fill rate shortfall. What I mean by that is they will see that some customer demands are not met. In those cases, the process taken by companies is to, if they are using spreadsheets for S&OP plan creation, it's very cumbersome to go back and change capacity and see if which capacities have to be prioritized to change to meet demand shortfalls. Those exercises become very cumbersome when using Excel spreadsheets. What DaRRT allows is a systematic process to debottleneck. What I mean by that is the end users can use DaRRT to solve in a serial manner to understand where the bottlenecks are, where the demand shortfall is, where the fill rate shortfall is, and what is responsible in creating that shortfall and how to debottleneck. That entire exercise is extremely powerful. That's enabled by DaRRT. Next up, I think I jumped one slide down. The next two slides, let me discuss the benefits of adopting decision intelligence in S&OP. Here are some qualitative benefits. They can be categorized in three buckets: the S&OP team, the procurement, marketing, and leadership team, and operations. The S&OP team itself, which is tasked with creating the plan, they realize reduced plan creation cycle time, higher fill rate, quicker response time to changes. So if there are some capacity changes or if the management approves some debottlenecking projects, they can incorporate them into their plans quickly and turn around and come up with a new plan which incorporates that change. They will experience higher quality results with fewer errors. From a procurement, marketing, and leadership standpoint, they will be able to rapidly identify and mitigate risk. Like I mentioned in that debottlenecking cycle, they will be able to rapidly identify demand shortfall risk or fill rate shortfall risk and identify it immediately and mitigate the risk by identifying the resources that need to be bottlenecked. They will also get the highest profit or lowest cost or the optimal plan. Spreadsheet-based S&OP plan creation does not allow for metrics and constraints to be handled easily, and so they will not be able to provide such benefits. They will also see lower lead times and quicker heads up to delays. From an operations standpoint, the manufacturing operations folks, they will see better asset utilization as The S&OP plan creation itself using DI will use the best assets, use the assets optimally to fulfill the demand. They will have quicker access to the plan as the plan will be created rapidly and communicated to them using browser-based interfaces like DaRRT, like the ones that are featured in DaRRT. And they will have realistic executable plans as all hard constraints are satisfied and all soft constraints are honored to the best possible extent. So these are the qualitative benefits. Let me move on to some tangible benefits that have been reported in the literature and also in our experience. So the numbers I show here are from well-known studies that have been executed in the field of sales and operations planning by industry experts. And on top of it, the benefits coming from using decision intelligence in S&OP are from our own experience. So they are validated by our experience as well. So if you can see, the benefits are quite remarkable in across the board, from on-time delivery improvement, inventory reduction, downtime reduction, efficiency in plant efficiency, and freight cost reduction. And using DI will only push the benefits, the tangible benefits, to the higher end of the range. The payback period for typical execution of DI-based S&OP products, S&OP projects, is literally in months, if not weeks, in our experience. Now we will switch into the video.
This is the browser-based user interface for DaRRT. The application itself is hosted on a server, whether it's on the cloud or on-prem. Upon logging in, the end user is presented with a list of scenarios. Each scenario is a copy of the model, which includes both the input and output data. Each scenario can independently run to generate an S&OP plan. Scenarios enable what-if analyses and plan comparisons. Role-based access controls who can access a scenario. Role-based access also enable read, write, and delete access to fields and tables. Role-based access also enables multiple users to have access to a scenario and screens. And it enables collaborative and persona-based planning. The export and import buttons at the top enable Excel, export and import, and manipulation of data manually. Let us click our way into a scenario. Upon getting into a scenario, clicking into the top left corner, you'll see a menu tree here with various input and output tables. The structure of the tree and the tables and the fields themselves are all configurable. If you go into any table, for example, you could click into the settings and configure it to your liking to display or not display certain field. I'm showing a scenario that has already been run. On the left, you see the input-output tables, and amongst them, the dashboard is the first thing you would go to get an overview of the scenario that has been run. And this is highly configurable and informative. You can filter the locations, parts, and materials, change the look of these cards that you're seeing in front of you in the dashboard. Next, I'm going to cover a very powerful feature of DaRRT. This is the one of creating data in preparation for creating scenario. I want to introduce the concept of a filter manager. A filter manager is an area in DaRRT where you can configure different filters of input data. A filter acts like a select query to identify the set of records from a table or a screen that needs to be modified in preparation for a what-if analysis. On the screen here, I've already populated with a configured filter which is essentially selecting data from a demand table based on criteria for a location and material. If you click the preview button, you will see the preview of the query in the bottom here. And this is basically for users who are familiar with SQL. You can see the result of the filter that you have just configured. So user can configure as many filters as possible just by specifying the criteria in the fields from tables that they can select. So this very powerful feature allows the end users to create input data for different scenarios without requiring them to know SQL. Here we demonstrate the concept of scenario generation itself. So next, what we're going to do is to take the filter that we just configured and use it to generate scenarios themselves. So in this screen, I'm showcasing two scenarios that have been developed by the end user solely by interacting with the user interface. So in this first scenario, this scenario is named as demand 10%, and the second scenario is named plus 20%. The first scenario is essentially using the select query that we just configured in the filter creation process. We are using that to configure the minimum demand to be equal to the old minimum demand multiplied by 1.1. And similarly, the demand plus 20% is configured using a 1.2 multiplier. And if you click the preview buttons, you will see the SQL queries equivalents appearing on your screen. So this allows the end users to create unlimited number of scenarios using a combination of input tables and the filters that were created in the previous steps. It's extremely powerful for the end user to create scenarios without requiring them to be knowledgeable in SQL or without IT help. Next, we are going to use the scenarios that we just created to create a process chain. A process chain is nothing but a sequence of steps which use the scenarios that we just created to run in a sequence. When we press this execute button, the scenarios run in a given sequence. So the end user can specify the sequence in which the scenarios need to be created, copied, and run. And there is no limit to the number of scenarios the user can run. So this gives very powerful capabilities for the end users to take the base scenario, for example, copy it to another scenario, bump it up by 10% in terms of demand, and solve it, and repeat that for another scenario, and so on. So the implications of this is that the end users can create this sequence however long they want, and then execute. And each step may take more time, so they may sign off for the night and let this run in the background, come in the morning, and have the results ready for them to look.
Now let's summarize our talk here. In summary, companies should leverage decision intelligence to model their supply chain to the most granular detail possible and use it in their S&OP process. They should handle complexity by using state-of-the-art solvers like Gurobi. DaRRT provides such a platform. The tangible benefits are significant, and the payback is in weeks, and the benefits are both qualitative as well as quantitative across the board, across manufacturing, supply chain, planning, and marketing, and finance functions in a company. So with that, I'll conclude my talk.
Well, thank you very much, Vijay. I really appreciate it. It was a great presentation, some good information on kind of a modern day S&OP approach with decision intelligence on top of that. We're going to go into a panel section here where I'm going to pepper you with a few more questions, and you can tell us a little bit more about to help to understand more about what you're saying here. And after which then we will go into audience Q&A, and I want to remind the audience once again that you can be submitting your questions even now by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. And when we get to the audience Q&A, we will get to as many of your questions as possible, time permitting. So VJ, decision intelligence applications, they are, of course, sensitive to input data quality. How does one address that issue?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something we deal with all the time when we implement DaRRT. Data quality is extremely important. First of all, data that's coming from as the foundation of S&OP planning, it needs to be sourced from the corporate data sources like an ERP system, like capacities, demand, and so on, yield numbers and so on. So this should come from legitimate sources within a company and not from distributed Excel spreadsheets from different people. So having said that, that data is also prone to mistakes and errors. So what we have seen in the past is a formal ETL cycle a company runs to have the data stored in a staging area database and have an ETL engine run over that data to modify that data if required, or correct that data for missing data or any errors, and then use it in the S&OP process. So a formal attention to detail in terms of error correction and also paying attention to where the data is coming from is crucial to S&OP success, whether we use advanced tools or not.
Thank you. So how do automation and the speed of the S&OP plan creation help companies specifically?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. Excel, of course, provides you with rapid solutions, but like I mentioned, adding detail in the Excel models is near impossible if you go at the SKU level or the work center level. So when you get into the decision intelligence based applications, conventionally you see that, typically you see that these models become very bulky and they may potentially be running slow. And that's where powerful solvers like Gurobi come into picture. Being able to solve such models quickly is very important, because the cornerstone or the foundational argument for using decision intelligence based approaches is that you can run many scenarios, and these many scenarios can be run, like I mentioned, by creating a base scenario and creating derivative scenarios from that base scenario. And in order to be able to do the Monte Carlo simulations, like I mentioned, to convince the management about the sensitivity of your decisions or your plans, it's very important to run them rapidly. So running these scenarios quickly is very essential for the success of the entire S&OP cycle.
Thank you. Collaboration, is it critical for S&OP? And what are the best practices for achieving collaboration? Because there are many parties involved in this, of course, just by definition.
Yes. There's sales, marketing, operations, finance, everybody's involved. So collaboration is extremely important. Data is coming typically asynchronously from many people. And traditional applications lack collaborative approaches because they are spreadsheet based, and they are based on spreadsheets saved on common hard drives at different times. And that makes the collaboration very difficult. So since the information is so dispersed within the company with different stakeholders, it's extremely important to be able to asynchronously collaborate and get data from different quarters and be able to challenge some of the assumptions used in generating those data sets, and then be able to get different versions of data, newer versions of data quickly, and that itself requires quite a bit of collaboration, not only from procurement of the data standpoint, obtaining the data standpoint, but also in negotiating the plan itself that will be created, the number of scenarios and the different scenarios created itself. So they need to be debated and understood, communicated. All of that is collaboration written all over it.
Yeah, great. Bottlenecks, big problem in supply chain, certainly all the time, but even more so in the last few years, both known and unknown. They do affect large supply chains. What best practices can you recommend to address these systematically?
Correct. Yeah, you rightly recognize the importance of bottlenecks. What we recommend is a formal approach in the S&OP cycle to address bottlenecks. So a typical cycle that we recommend is the following. So you would run your straight version 1 S&OP plan creation, and you would come up with a solution. And then when you are assessing different scenarios where you see fill rate shortfalls, you need to go back and further assess what are the causes of those shortfalls. And in doing so, the second cycle of S&OP solve, the second cycle of plan creation itself entails forcing the demand to be satisfied while allowing the model to violate constraints at cost. And this is the key. When you're allowing the model to violate constraints, you are not using artificially really high value for constraint violation. You are using relatively stable numbers or relatively reasonable numbers for capacity violations. Like if you have a line that needs to be added, you don't just put a very large number there. You use a realistic number of what it would cost to increase capacity of that line and so on. So when you solve that second iteration of the problem, tools like DaRRT will give you deeper insights into what is the Pareto or what is the sorted order of your bottlenecks that you need to go after to debottleneck your solution. So there's a systematic process that you can follow to address bottlenecks.
Excellent. Okay, Vijay, we know human nature being what it is, employees are afraid, if not in terror of automation. They feel absolutely insecure about it. How should C-level leadership motivate financial planning and analysis, marketing, manufacturing, all of that to embrace so-called cutting-edge automation tools so that they're not afraid of losing their jobs?
Great question. First of all, the leadership should get educated on the state-of-the-art tools themselves and be aware of the art of the possible. And they should, after that, they should create awareness of these state-of-the-art tools amongst their team members, whether it's the S&OP leaders. They can start with the FP&A team and the S&OP leaders and trickle it down to manufacturing and sales and other functions in the company. They should realize that ERP systems alone cannot provide planning support. So ERP systems are transactional systems, and they cannot be used. They can, at best, be sources of high quality data. And they should do a good job educating their workforce about the impact of these 21st century tools, which do number crunching really well and allow planners to spend more quality time addressing issues like supplier reliability or customer expectations, setting customer expectations, and so on. Now, after all said and done, if we are not able to debottleneck, there will be demand shortfalls. In that case, they need to be able to understand, how should they manage customer expectations. So the S&OP team or the planning team should get involved with their customers and suppliers more closely and spend their bandwidth and attention in those functions rather than in the act of creating, rather than on the act of creating the plan itself. So that awareness is lacking. That's why they're afraid of losing their jobs to automation. So the management has to make this case to their team so that they understand that their functions will be elevated to assessing the plans, creating the plans, asking the right questions, and managing customer and supplier expectations. And their jobs will be only more valuable. And that's a message their management has to convey and deal with.
For sure. So S&OP, as we know, has been around for a long time. It's evolved over that time, and it's about to evolve even more in the light of artificial intelligence and especially generative AI. What, in your opinion, Vijay, lies ahead for the next generation of S&OP?
Yeah, we have thought through this. All of us are in the midst of this newfound zeal for generative AI. Right? We put some thought around it and how and where this could go and how it could be leveraged in applications. First of all, we start with the recognition that solvers are the results of solvers. They handle complexity, but the results are kind of black box-ish in the sense that there is no insight, there is no explainability. So generative AI could play a really good role there to convince the planners about the quality and the feasibility of the plan. And that will open the box, so to speak, and make it more transparent as to how decisions are arrived at. And that's a big challenge, explainable AI, explainability of the results. It could also play the role of generating the scenarios, generating the many possible scenarios that the user may not have thought of. And I mentioned about the S&OP process in a company where the meetings happen and the presentations are made and so on. So there's a lot of material generated, whether it is slides or reports, dashboards. Those can be streamlined and generated rapidly by something like generative AI. That's the hope I have in terms of how this could definitely help the entire field of automating S&OP plan creation.
Okay, great. So I think at this point, time permitting, let's shift into audience Q&A. Audience members, there's still time for you to submit your questions, even as we are answering the ones that already came in, and we're going to get to as many of them as we can, as many as possible. So let me move into this one. This audience question, Vijay, says, are scenarios run instantaneously or through overnight processing? And additionally, does DaRRT provide recommendation of scenarios to consider?
Okay. The first question, so scenarios can be run on demand. They can be created and run, or they can be created and queued to be run. Typically, if you have many scenarios that you want to create and queued to run, you can do that. Or if you want to run on demand, you can do that as well. And second question, no, DaRRT does not provide recommendations to create particular scenarios. That comes from your subject matter expertise. It only allows you to create them rapidly once you know which scenarios are to be created.
Okay. This person is saying we've invested heavily in our ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning System. Can it be used to achieve S&OP optimization and automation? Why do we need a separate application? I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, but go ahead and say it, Vijay.
Good. ERP systems are great for transactions. They are designed for transactions. They cannot develop constrained S&OP plans using optimization tools. They are an excellent source of data for S&OP tools, and purpose-built tools for planning drive consensus and ensure the smooth execution of the company's goals. So our experience has been that the ERP tools, many companies have tried to use ERP to create constraint planning, manufacturing planning or S&OP planning, and it generally is not very successful that path is not very successful. Where we have seen applications succeed are where they build bridges between the ERP systems and their systems, whether it is S&OP, Excel-based systems or otherwise, to derive data from ERP and then feed them into purpose-built applications for S&OP. Those are the ones that have seen succeed rather than the ERP systems.
Great. Can you provide some actual examples of how organizations have leveraged decision intelligence to improve their S&OP outcomes?
Certainly. In our consulting practice, we over the last couple of decades, we have implemented several dozens of applications in this area. And there's a large polymer production company which has a global footprint of more than 50 sites. They use many raw materials, including benzene, phenol, and they produce, industrial grade thermopolymers. They make their own building blocks throughout the world, and they make their own finished goods, plastic pellets, as well as the resin that needs to be bulk sold. So it's a very complicated supply chain with more than 50 plants throughout the world. Our execution of S&OP, their S&OP planning tools, there saved over $1 million in plant closing at the right location at that time. Their demand was coming low, and they wanted to make a strategic decision to close plants, and that's an example where we really showcase the benefit of going systematic and using formal optimization-based tools. There was a large aircraft manufacturer. We implemented S&OP tool, a precursor of DaRRT, where $2 million were saved in terms of cost reduction, inventory cost reduction. A wine and spirits company saved over $5 million in cost avoidance when they were debottlenecking their operations to use their tank capacity to best satisfy demand from their demand in their supply chain. So these are some of a few examples that showcase that the benefits are across the board in terms of whether it is inventory reduction, cost avoidance, operational cost reduction, or capital cost reduction.
So regarding the what-if scenarios, the questioner wants to know, have you considered using stochastic programming or robust automation within the technology that you developed? Or are there problems estimating probability distributions, for example, for demand or production capacity?
Yeah, the last part was not clear. Can you read?
Are there problems? You face problems that estimating probability distributions, for example, for demand or production capacity?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't have a good answer. First, we don't have any systematic way within DaRRT to estimate any probabilities. Those are all related to your subject matters and your specific supply chains and business. With regard to handling stochastic programming and robust optimization, those are not explicitly used in DaRRT. That's something we probably would consider in future as technologies to incorporate. But currently, DaRRT can be configured to run many scenarios, like I mentioned in the video, in a batch simulation way. You can create those scenarios and queue them up to run. That is the extent to which we go to address uncertainty, to handle uncertainty. We have executed or delivered stochastic programming, technologies using stochastic programming and planning. Those tend to be very hard to understand and convince the end users. So we kind of stayed away in this version of DaRRT at this point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What is the return on investment and payback period when we implement decision intelligence-based S&OP systems like DaRRT?
Payback is literally in terms of in the payback period is in terms of months, if not weeks, typically. So we have seen that. That's owing to the complexity of the supply chains using such products. If your supply chain is simple and with very few products, definitely products like DaRRT are not suitable. But large companies that do use systems like DaRRT can expect payback to be in months.
Okay. Right. Here's an interesting question. Do we use linear programming formulation and code it in Python, then use Gurobi optimizer to the end of code here? Getting in the weeds here a little bit, VJ, but maybe you can help with this question.
Oh yeah, that route can be taken as well. Yes, I mean, we have created DaRRT with a superset of decision variables and constraints that are the usual suspects in modeling large supply chains. And it is a result of close to 20 years of our consulting practice, where we have seen many variants of constraints, many nuances of what supply chains could do and could not do. So it's a distillation of many things based on our experience. So DaRRT has embedded in it, decades and decades of experience of many consultants, supply chain consultants. But the questioner is right. There is the possibility that you can roll up your sleeves and make your own model using Python and call Gurobi to solve your own problem, your own build your own customized S&OP optimization application. Yes, that's possible.
This questioner wants to know about computational efficiency. Says when models get detailed and extensive, the running times are usually very large. How do you manage that? How do you implement some solution strategies to balance optimality with computational times?
That's a great question. And this is something we have a very tight integration with the Gurobi technical team. When we do face these challenges at some customers, when we face challenges related to solving time and increasing efficiency, we rely on their experience and expertise to get to the best tuning parameters possible. That's one aspect. There are several tricks up our sleeve that we use to make the models run faster as companies embed more detail, incorporate more detail. The decomposition techniques are one techniques I can understand. In that aircraft example that I mentioned, we were able to successfully decouple their supply chain and not model the entire supply chain in one shot, and we're able to decouple that in two supply chains which were minimally interacting. We were also able to decouple or break the solving horizon, which was 2 years. We were able to break that into chunks of quarters and able to stitch the solutions back together, so that these solutions, that the problems that are run at every quarter are smaller, and also they can be run on distributed and computing environments. So we do have several, we do this all the time. We do have several approaches to handle complexity when it comes to scalability.
Unfortunately, we are just about out of time, VJ, which leaves us with time for just one final question. And here it is. We use spreadsheets for planning. Really? Doesn't everybody? Why change this? Why should we embrace automation and optimization?
All right. Great parting question. Spreadsheets cannot deal with large, detailed supply chain models. Beyond a few hundred constraints and decision variables, spreadsheet models become cumbersome and error-prone. Right? Companies should model their supply chain in sufficient detail, and for this, spreadsheet models do not work. Moreover, Spreadsheet models are often tied to the person who created them and must be created when the person leaves the team. Right? So this is the phenomenon we see all the time. Optimization has its benefits. Optimal, feasible, and actionable plans can be generated rapidly using formal, purpose-built applications using solvers like Gurobi. So that's my case for embracing tools beyond Excel spreadsheets.
Thank you, Vijay. And again, it's so unfortunate that we are out of time. We had a lot more audience questions and great audience participation, but I'm sure that Vijay would be only too happy to answer all those remaining questions offline that we didn't have time for before. So I want to thank Vijay for this great presentation and the audience for your listening in and your excellent questions too. Here's some information that you can go for more. Here's sources for more information. Optimal Solutions offers a free proof of concept to explore if decision intelligence can help in your S&OP process. And certainly we found out today that it can. So do contact Vijay at osiopt.com. Proof of concept can be run using data assembled in Excel in just 1 to 2 weeks. So be sure and give Vijay a call. And here's a couple of QR codes that will take you to the URLs of Optimal Solutions and Gurobi optimization. And we will send you these URLs, and all attendees will receive these in an email within 24 hours. So if you can't snap a picture right now, you'll get that information anyway. Once again, Vijay Hanagundi, I want to thank you so much for enlightening us on the current state of S&OP and decision intelligence and learning about DaRRT and Gurobi, and David O'Keefe for popping in from Gurobi too to help us understand a little bit about Gurobi. So thanks everybody. Thank you audience and everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.